Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Drapers Connects. My name is Graham Moran, and I am the Associate Editor here at Drapers. For those of you joining us for the first time, Drapers Connects is our series of digital events and virtual content that aims to connect the industry via Q&A discussions, panel talks, and live webinars such as this. So thank you all for joining us. If you are watching live, please feel free to ask questions via the Q&A function that should be at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer them throughout or at the end. So in partnership with Jaw, today we will explore the rise of Scandi style and discuss successful brand building with Denmark's Ganni, Norway's Holzweiler, and Sweden's Stand Studio. So I'm very happy to have our expert panel with us today. We have Thomas Lecoq, Global Wholesale Director at Ganni. We have Sarah May Brown, Commercial Director at Holzweiler. We have Bentley, Global Sales Director at Stand Studio, and Chris Akrimi, Chief Revenue Officer at Jaw. So thank you to our panel. To kick us off, Chris, why don't you give us an introduction to Jaw?
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Graham, for the intro. First of all, excited to be here, specifically with our brands, Ganni, Holzweiler, and Stand. In essence, to discuss all things Scandi, as you mentioned, Graham, in terms of wholesale brand. Really looking forward to this webinar and actually gleaning some further insights. So thank you again to Thomas, Sarah, and Bent. So I'm the Global Chief Revenue Officer at Jaw, and I have various facets to my role. So first of all, I look after the net new business, brand, retail, trade show, and payments. I've actually been with the company for just over 3 years. But previously, and I mentioned it earlier, but actually it showed my age, actually, I've had 20 years experience in the pure wholesale retail space. So these webinars for me very much touch a lot of many points of interest. Just to introduce Jaw very quickly for those that are not familiar, Jaw very much regards itself as the leading global wholesale digital ecosystem. And actually, to synthesize that, at the core, we are a B2B wholesale platform for tools that actually brands and retailers can allow themselves to grow their business. I think the perspective that we take is we're a lot more than a digital line sheet per se. You know, Jaw has evolved, especially post the pandemic, to really support the journey of our brands and retailers end to end, meaning pre-season, mid-season, and actually post-season. And really that's for the collaboration to take place between the buyers and the brands directly on the platform. There's kind of 4 or 5 key metrics. I always kind of give an overview in terms of Jaw, and it's kind of really to understand the scale of the business. But we work with around 14,000 brands and actually 53 individual categories. So that's around 600,000 active buyers on the platform, spread over 150 countries. And in terms of wholesale revenue, or wholesale GMV, shall I say, we amass around 1.7 billion on a monthly basis. So if you think of this on an annual basis at retail, it's almost 45 to 50 billion at a retail level. And then we're still around 12.5 million products sold on a monthly basis. So this kind of echoes the scale and the adoption by our brands and retailers on the platform. So again, excited to talk more with our panelists here on this webinar. Back to you.
Thank you, Chris. So to kick us off, I would say maybe a decade ago, people might have struggled to name a list of globally successful Scandinavian fashion brands outside of Scandinavia. But today, shoppers have certainly fallen in love with Scandi style. But this fashion phenomenon is a lot more than just pretty dresses. These small businesses, 3 of which are represented here today, have built brands that dominate wholesale stockists around the world, have opened networks of physical stores overseas, and have built influential online followings and digital platforms. So I thought to start us off and set a bit of context, I'd love to ask the panel, how do you sum up Scandi style today, and why do you think it has proven so successful in recent years? Ben, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's Scandinavian style. I mean, I think it's such a a big scale somehow, and there are so many layers behind. And you know, I immediately start to think of what kind of layers, how is it built. Now you mentioned like it's a very professional business that is going on, that is for sure, but behind that there's a lot of emotions, and I'm kind of like thinking of all these emotion going into now at Stand Studio. We are primarily working on women's business, and I'm kind of thinking of this liberal, modern, and independent woman, you know, that has a lot of values that we need to kind of embrace as a company as well. You know, we're talking about feminism, it could be like tolerance, a lot of empathy in general, intuition, and of course sustainability and health. Those must be keys for a lot of the consumers that we are working with globally. And I think this is absolutely part of the Scandinavian style today, just incorporated down on a product level. And I mean, you know, combining these values with, you know, we all kind of say, okay, we want to make the perfect wardrobe, whatever, to the consumer out there, and we want to take all these values, but we obviously also have to combine that with a lot of playfulness, a lot of colorful products, effortless products, novelties, and of course investment pieces, super important. And when you take that all into one big pot, I think that is what defines the Scandinavian style today. And then yes, of course, behind that, and I know that we're going to be talking a little bit more about that later on, like the actual business of it. But all these emotions are highly driven, at least for Stand Studio. I'm pretty sure also for Ganni and Holzweiler, like they represent a big value for all of our companies to enable us to deliver more than just a product to the end consumer.
Yeah, everyone's nodding. Thomas, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. I think like Scandinavian style, like a few years back, you would think it would be like about minimalism and like very simple like silhouettes. I think now, and we can see with the panel here, like that's way more than that. And I think the one thing that we do have in common, I would say, is yes, about like self-expression. I think it's very important to empower like our customers, whether like the women's or like men out there. And I think it's very much about like feeling like good about yourself, wherever you are, feeling comfortable. I think it's also very important, even like through the layering, like to make sure like everything you're going to wear, like you actually feel comfortable with. And obviously, as Bent mentioned, like I think like being responsible is very important to all of us. Like I think it's becoming more of a global topic, obviously, but I do believe that like Scandinavia owns that part of the narrative at the moment, and I think that's what like all brands are trying to achieve. And I know that, for instance, for Ganni, it's really about like that's at the core of our business. All decisions that are like made are definitely in that direction as well. We're like trying to make like beautiful clothes, but like a better world at the same time.
Excellent. Sarah May, I know you've worked with several Scandinavian brands through your career, particularly Acne a few years ago. How have you seen Scandi style change, maybe, and why do you think it's so successful?
Yeah, well, as Thomas said, I think it used to be very much thought of as laid back or pared back kind of dressing. But I think, you know, the truth is really it's more about being individual and a way of, again, as Thomas said, your self-expression. I think it's really important especially at Holzweiler and both at Acne, that the clothes are functional. And I think I mentioned to you before that in many cases, function governs form rather than the other way around, like when you think about perhaps Italian style, which is so beautiful and flamboyant, and it's all about the shapes. But, you know, in terms of, as Ben mentioned, you know, the environmental aspects and the wellness aspects, these clothes need to fit into people's lives, their daily lives. So whether that's cycling or whether, you know, they need, like at Holzweiler, we have little completely waterproof pockets for your iPhones and things like that. So making sure that they're investment pieces and pieces for life. You know, at Holzweiler, we really want to make the world a better place. By buying our products means you are, you know, if you buy more Holzweiler, it will be ultimately better for the environment in the long term. But also, you know, with us and with, I think, all of my panelists here, as Ben mentioned, you're buying into the brand. So for us, our values are very much rooted in family. We're a family business. There's a brother, sister, wife combo. And so when you're buying into it, you're buying into being part of that family. And I think that was the case with Acne, especially back in the days. You know, it was a design studio, it was a creative hub, it was almost a bit like the factory back in the days. So buying into that, you were very much buying into the brand vision and being part of that community. And I think that the Scandi style people have, it really is rooted in community first and foremost. But in terms of actual look and feel, I think perhaps the individuality, but more of the genderless and fluidity has always been a part of it, especially at Acne. We had men's and women's wearing the same jeans and all the same kind of shapes of t-shirts and things. And that's something really interesting to watch as it evolves with all of the other brands. And I think Ben said earlier that there's room for everyone in today's playing field. And that's such a nice way to think about it, because actually, coming back to what I was saying earlier, individuality and just being true to who you are as a person and really shining through is very important to the Scandi brand heritage.
Graham, can I just add something really quickly here? Hopefully you don't mind, because there's a common thread which I've heard this panel, which is great, and there is very much a sustainability element which is coming through as well, which a lot of brands are really considering now. And it's interesting, as part of the projects that we've been working on at Jaw, many retailers now that we're integrated with and they're having the platform are very much asking the brands about their sustainability criteria. So this movement that clearly these brands are making, not just from a Scandinavian point of view, but also more importantly with regards to that thought process in terms of how you're building the product and the sustainability part, we're very much entrenched in that moving forward as well. So I just wanted to add that, because I know that's also a key component.
Definitely, thank you. As you mentioned, there is room for everybody, but as there are more brands and more brands that are successful, that only increases the competition. So I wanted to ask, there is this kind of community and this similarity, but also, you know, you have to stand out from the crowd. You can't just be another brand. And I think the businesses represented here definitely do that. So I wanted to ask, what advice do you have for people listening about making sure that you can be part of a community, but also stand out as a brand? Sarah May, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so we have a really famous story about a Norwegian entrepreneur who is a hotelier, and he has a great story to his business. He started as a fruit salesman, and one thing that he says is that you always have to focus on selling the strawberries that you have, selling, you know, the fruit that's in your basket. And going back to what I was saying before, I think it's really important to be yourself, to, you know, not to try to be another brand, not to try to, you know, okay, well, now this brand selling very well with minimalism, so now we'll do that. You know, you have to make sure that you're really secure in what your brand message is. And, you know, in the old days, I imagine there are probably a lot of young aspiring designers watching today, but in the old days, it used to be really about having the best product. And nowadays it's about having the best customers, right? And Jaw is really something that helps you connect with those customers, because it's not only the end consumer, but the customers being the stores themselves and the brand that is that store. But so making sure that you're speaking to the right people as well. I think it's, you know, making sure that you're not trying to over distribute, that you're not trying to be be something for everyone, but really knowing yourself, being yourself, know your own business as well, right? Like if you don't know your clients' sell-throughs and your clients' results with your brand, and then you come in and you're busy focusing on what other brands are doing, then then you have no point of validity or truthfulness in your relationship with that client. So making sure that you know your business better than the clients know themselves, so that they can trust you when you say, this is going to be a great new style, or we as a brand really believe in this going forwards, right? So that's my advice to anyone out there, is making sure that you're just really true to your guns.
Thank you. Thomas, do you have any advice to add?
I can only echo what Sarah just mentioned. I think we all agree that at the moment, like, you really have to stay true to yourself. I think our customers, our end consumers, but also like our partners stocking the brands, they're in a position like every day to think, okay, who's the best partner for me? And they're very also like they know exactly what they need. And I think like trends are gonna pass, but like you need to know what you're good at and stick to it, and grow based on that as well, grow on top of that. I think the worst thing would be to follow like the trends, because like that's gonna last for a little bit of time, but then like when the trend changes, what are you left with? Not much. So I think it's, if I could give one piece of advice, it's really like stay true to yourself.
Ben, you're nodding. I'm guessing you agree.
No, I as the panel, I completely agree here. It's so well said, both from Thomas and Sarah May. It's being unique. We can be unique in all kind of ways. It doesn't have to be product. It can be branding. It can be vice versa. It can be on a product and a specific collaboration, whatever. But again, as Sarah May started to say in the beginning, is that just that, focus in what you're really feeling that you are the best at, and continue down that road. And then of course, there should be room to put stuff on the side of that road. But when we are, I'm pretty sure that the entire panel are studying as much as we can with the limited time that we have. Other brands, new business, emerging brands, for inspiration, to understanding where we're headed towards on a design level, etc., etc. And when I'm taking time to do that study, very, very often, out of the very few brands that I actually do dive in, I would say that on the new business, maybe 80-90% of those brands are very, very often focused so heavily in the branding in front of the actual product, and that can sadden me a little bit, because in the end, maybe it's just because that we are in this panel plus 40, all of us. So, but the Y2K, I mean, maybe they have a different opinion. I couldn't say, but in the end, it is. It feels like that product level sometimes is easier just to put a little bit behind or set aside. So the advice would definitely be, have a very, very strong focus between the product and the focus of the branding, and then you can put on your fingerprint on collaboration, products, colors, whatever that is unique in a special collection perhaps. But be loyal to philosophy. That is for sure an advice.
Excellent, thank you, Bent. I think it's clear that all three businesses have listened to your own advice, because you have definitely kind of ridden this wave, the Scandi wave that we've talked about, in your own ways, which I find, which is why I think it's so interesting having this panel together. But I did want to ask, if you could pick maybe one or two things that you think has been a key ingredient of your personal brand success, what might that be? What do you think has kind of really driven that forward? Thomas, why don't we start with you this time?
I think, going back to what we touched on, I think for us, it really started with our community, and I would say even our communities, because like we went like the brand like is quite a young brand, like with the experience that we had. But like I think what we did is really speak. We realized that there's a community, a Ganni community, at least like in most like the markets we were entering, and it's just like talking to them because they felt, again, going back also to the values that we're carrying on top of the product, obviously. And making sure they were at the center of like our attention and our business. And I think that's how it started. We spoke to more and more people. They not only related to the product, but also like to our wish to become like a better versions of ourselves as well. And I think this is really like the key to our success until now. And then it's just also like having a good attitude when it comes to like growth. I think it's very, you have to be like smart in the way you go, like don't go, sometimes it's quite like easy to go, like to want to go fast, but I think it's also like making sure you have a plan. You actually like look at the right way to develop, like in the key markets that you have like targeted, and have like a 360 approach. I think I agree with Bent, like product is key. Branding is also very important, obviously, but like you need to have like a strong product, and I think you need to advertise it the right way. You need to push it the right way, and again, keeping. I mean, for us, it was really keeping our community at the center of our strategy.
Thank you. Ben, what about you? What do you think is really
it's similar. I mean, the points that Thomas just mentioned is for sure important points. Maybe on that, how to say, more soft emotionally strategy, that is important, that's incorporated on a global scale and being told in the right format. I mean, so I completely agree on that. On a more, how to say, strategically distribution orientated thing, from our point of view, one of our key successes for where we are at now today would be that we have, and Thomas just mentioned it briefly, we've been focusing heavily in each and every market and penetrated this under the vital few. So that's kind of like versus the tribal many, because you know we can all go out and try to grab whatever we can in the net, and maybe you win some and maybe you lose some. But today in the world that we are in, and not even just now, also during COVID and before COVID, shooting with laser sights for us have been extremely important. And targeting the client on this dialogue here, the key clients, which I hate to say, but of course there are existing key clients out there, at least for all of us here. And I mean, in the end, having that conversation with every single of those clients that represents a big amount of turnover on a specific market. That is a dialogue that very often is easier to have with a key client, because they are also a different company very often versus a boutique level. It's another kind of conversation. So for sure, like the vital few building up, and then for sure also having a lot of boutiques that drives the fashionable pieces, that drives all the branding as well. Is extremely important. So yeah. Thank
you. Sarah, on to you.
Yeah, so I've been at Holzweiler now since the beginning of the year. So we're implementing a lot of these strategies at the moment. One thing that I think I really echo for both Thomas and Ben is making sure that you're working with the right partners. So I think I said this before, but not over distributing yourself. So we'll talk about strategy a little bit later, but you can work on a selective distribution model where you're working with the right partner for you in one town, and not making sure you're selling to too many people, which is I think what Ben was talking about before. But one thing that I think is really important within that is monitoring your sell-through. And I saw that there was a question for that, which said, how do you get that? Because it's easy enough when you're working with a department store and they send them to you every Monday and you don't even need to chase them. But when you're working with the independent stores, and the independent stores can make up a huge amount of your business as well. But the best way to get the figures from the client is to ask them. right? Like literally get on the phone and give them a call. And I worked really closely with Asia for many years, and they have something called anti-competition regulations. So if you have your own store in that town or that region, they legally cannot give you the figures, but you can always call them and say, how are trousers doing for you? What trousers? Okay, you bought 10 of this style trouser. How many did you sell? Like, you can always get the information. I think, just being really consistent with that and making sure that you are always following up with your clients and keeping that dialogue open so that relationship can be a respectful and an honest one. And another thing that I said, I'm going to completely contradict myself now, but when I was saying staying true to your brand is really important, but I think it's also really important to learn from your mistakes, right? Like, so definitely stay true to your brand goals and your brand ideas, but also, don't be afraid to try things and fail, because you'll always learn from them. So if you decide that you're suddenly going to do a jersey line, but then the pandemic's over or something like that, don't be afraid to keep what worked, keep those things that were, the lessons that were successful, but maybe apply them to a new product strategy or a new distribution strategy or a new pricing strategy. But don't be afraid to fail, but make sure whatever you're doing is true within your own world, your own, you're not trying to be someone else, but also try new things. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't get disheartened, right, when things don't work, because there's always something that you can learn and grow from if you don't be afraid to take any risks as well.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Nice. Chris, you work with hundreds of brands around the world, so I wanted to ask, obviously we've kind of there's a lot in common just on this panel, but I wondered if you, with all the brands that you work with, when you see those ones that are really successful at the moment, what is it that stands out for you?
Yeah, I think, listen, from a technology point of view, the key ingredient that we've seen, and it's changed somewhat prior to the pandemic or pre-pandemic, in the pandemic, where everything was digital, and now we're kind of in a hybrid model between the physical showrooms and actually the digital. The key element that we're seeing is the desire for brands and retailers to very much adopt technology, right? To really move the industry forward, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about the way that they're actually capitalizing on their wholesale orders, on their stock, on their efficiencies, on their payment solutions. We've seen a cosmic shift in terms of technology, right? And actually Jaws the epicenter. And I think one of the things I was going to talk to in terms of some of our key ingredients is listening to our clients, right? So, we are evolving as a business and we're evolving as a platform. We're trying to innovate and keep up what our brands are requiring in terms of making sure that we're giving them best practices and the right tone of voice to be that brand for a global network. So again, high level, but some of the things kind of we've introduced during and post the pandemic is really enhancing the digital showroom, the look and feel, the brands, and then giving them the right assets to create that content to be able to share with their retailers. We've integrated best-in-class third-party solutions such as 360 videos and 3D images, etc. And then kind of a high-level perspective, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a bit more detail, but we host digital events, trade shows. We have a global marketplace and network, and actually we also have a payment solution which we launched last year. So all of these are the ingredients that we focus on, and to really kind of have a multifaceted approach to our clients.
Thank you, Chris. So you did touch on it there, Chris. I wanted to really draw out from the people on the panel, wholesale strategies have obviously been, well, I would say, have been an important part of your expansion and your success. So I wanted to ask if you could share some strategies that you focused on in that wholesale space, and if you have any advice for optimizing wholesale and really making the most of it. We have had some questions from the audience around this already, so I'll try and weave them in, depending what your answers are. Thomas, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, the like across the brands I've worked for, and I think that's very true for Ganni as well. Like the key to success is to have like a well-balanced distribution in wholesale, and it can be like if we're talking about geographies, like relying on one typology of market is quite like I would say it might be dangerous, because you never, like especially in the world we live in, you end up having like regions that become like irrelevant from one day to another. So if most of your business or all of your business is coming from one region, I would say it's quite dangerous. So quite contradicting myself as well, like saying that like we focused on like our main markets, but I think now we're in a place where we're a global brand, and I think the what is very like helpful is that yes, like one day you might have like a market that is doing extremely well, and like that is going to help like make up for one that like has been struggling a bit more because of like political or like just macro like reasons. So I think that's one key to the success. And it's also like I think like in wholesale you obviously have like different business models. You have department stores, retailers, specialty stores, franchise partners, and like marketplaces, a few of those. I think it's also good not to have like all your eggs in the same basket. Going back to what like I think there was a question about like how do you put your foot like in the door, like to get like and to work with those key retailers. I think as great as they are, like obviously it's giving you the brand like equity. It's helping like building the brand equity. It's helping like giving you like visibility in the market. But I would say that like never like underestimate like the small specialty stores. They are like coming up with like usually like smaller budgets in general, but like when you add them all up, it's becoming like something that you cannot dismiss 100%. And I think they're also like if you work with them well, and that goes back to like the relationship that you have with them. COVID was like obviously like a different ball game, but I think now to go back to the discussion about Joe as well, I think now it's very much about like a digital experience, and I think Joe for me is a very good example of that. It doesn't mean that like Joe is going to replace the experience that you're going to have like in the showrooms. I think one thing that we learned on the back of COVID is that as much as you, like everyone was saying at one point during your video calls, okay, now like there might be a new way of working. I think we went to a new way, yes, but at the same time, it's more about yes, seeing people in real life, meeting face to face in the showrooms. I don't think that's going anywhere, and that's actually a good thing, because I think it's very much about like human relationships, and also like seeing the product, which is why we're all here in the first place. But like also making sure you are actually improving the experience. And Joy is a very good tool for that. It's super helpful. I was mentioning to you yesterday, Graham, I think like back in the days, you would like make selections on line sheets that were printed. First of all, it's not very sustainable. And second, it's quite like a headache when it comes to actually like having all your notes together. I think it's we're definitely like in a much like a better place. Joe has been like a great tool within the showroom, but as Chris was also saying, during the season, after the season, I think it's helping brands, but also retailers working better together. So I think it's very much about having, again, going back to what I was saying, having the right balance between the different business models as well, because you never know. Again, like same like department stores are going to have like a different approach to the business, and maybe your product is also at one season is going to resonate better with like specialty stores. So I would say that's like something that I would recommend as well to any brand.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Thomas. Ben, why don't we come to you?
Right. Well, I mean, I think I can add an extra layer for sure, but everything has basically been said already. It is really about what both Sarame and Thomas have already mentioned. We at Stand Studio onboarded with Jor only 6 months ago, and that was a great experience for us walking into a platform, as Chris already mentioned, that has seriously global reach, where we are interacting with bigger global partners. We're also having the boutique level. So when we at Stand Studio started at that time, we were I believe we were having around 500-600 partners, and out of those partners, 90% of them already was connected to Jor. So we basically, we made life easier for our clients, for ourselves. I understand it's a priority in each company because nothing is for free in this world. And we also needed to prioritize this in front of something else that we also would love to have, but do we need to have it? And switching into Jor was a need to have in order for keeping up the success that we are having at the moment. So yeah, for sure. I mean, it is really thinking inwards and just taking the hard decision and then compromising that with letting go of something else in the end, which is okay. Down the road, you'll still be able to do all kind of fantastic campaigns or whatever that those budgets were meant to go to. But in actual wholesales, this is a vital organ that I don't think that many of us are able to live without today.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, I know you have lots of advice. We could talk for hours. We did on our prep call. But if you were to kind of try and sum up, your approach and kind of what's worked well.
For sure, and I've read a couple of the questions, and I think I can try and work those into some of the strategy here. Every brand that I've ever worked for has been either at the beginning of a new brand journey or a rebranding journey. So even though, when I was at Acne, we had 2 suppliers in the UK. So one of them was Harrods, which was me buying it. And the other one was a denim store, which was not the aspiration of the brand to move forward. So even though it was a big brand in Scandinavia at the time, it had 0 brand penetration in the UK and in Europe predominantly. But so someone was asking about at the beginning, like what happened at the beginning and what should you do? And I think this comes back to what everyone on the panel has been saying today is to really know your customers, right? Whereas we started by saying know yourself and then decide, okay, well, if this is my brand values, who are the customers I want to work with? And, yes, it's all very well wanting to work with Net-a-Porter and things, but they will come, when you put in the time with these independent stores. Get to know who those stores are. Start small. Choose 3 globally that you want to work with, and maybe that's a store at the end of your street. It should always be someone that rings true to your brand values and someone that ideally you have a genuine relationship with. And I would always say do one thing well, then 5 things badly, right? So create that relationship with that client. Go in and see them, bring them cakes, bring them, whatever it is, go interrupt them at their yoga class, like whatever it takes, stalking is not legal, but there are ways around it. But to create genuine relationships with these people, work with them and focus on that. So do an in-store activation, meet your customers. So if you're the designer and you have this one store in one city, then make sure you do an event there and you are physically there meeting your customers. Put the hours in to really get to know their business inside out, which is what I said at the beginning. So start small and establish yourself within that network and make sure that it's meaningful connections that you're making both with the customer that is the retailer and the end consumer. And do it yourself, be present, be there on the phone, always getting the feedback, as I mentioned earlier, when you're trying to get your figures from clients. And then those buyers will start to talk, right? And if people see that it's performing well in XYZ store, then suddenly they're going to be asking, well, how do we get a piece of that, right? So making sure that you're just being really thorough and genuine, and then it will come. I also think with a selective distribution model, so that is working with one store in each city, or one store in each region, even making sure that is the right one for you, and also that the others aren't cutting each other out of business, either by undercutting in terms of pricing. We can't legally do price fixing, but making sure that if you have a great relationship with that client, then you can call them and say, I'd really appreciate it if you respected the price that everyone else is doing, and you can do this in nice ways if you have the existing relationship with that client. And then another secret to success, no secret here today, is actually using Jor, right? Like they have, what was it you said? Was it 60,000 orders a week going through the books, 50 billion every year, right? You can be a part of that. I've been working in this industry for 20 years and I know a lot of clients, but there's a lot I don't know as well, and if we want to target new areas, it's no secret, being present, being physically there is a true key to success. But in this day and age, we can't be everywhere all at once. And we can't, maybe we want to limit travel for environmental reasons as well, right? But you can reach out to these clients through Jor. You don't even need to know them. There's a magical button that says find connections. And it's honestly, if you put the time in, and, don't just be lazy. Don't just click and send a templated message, make it personal, and then phone them and see, did you get my message? I reached out to you on Jor. But, using Jor to create those connections, and then they can see your beautiful products. And also, something that Chris said that I thought was so great is that Jor is evolving. I've been with Jor since it first came to the UK. And it's changed so much. It's no longer a digital blank sheet. So, we now have this way that you can create a selective edit for each individual client, or, you can create mood boards for them. These kind of things they show that you're putting the work in for your client, right? They're time consuming, but it shows that you care about your client's business. And I think that's kind of at the heart of everything that I've been saying.
Excellent, thank you. Chris, you were nodding vigorously.
I'm nodding furiously, yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. I'd like to echo the general sentiment from the panel here, which first and foremost, Jor is not there to replace the showroom experience. The tactile, the look and feel, the experiences, the relationships that all of these wonderful brands have with their stores is absolutely paramount. They want to have that coffee, have that cold drink afterwards, talk about business, go through sell-throughs. It's absolutely key. But we are there to support and enhance that experience, right? Which is absolutely fundamental. There's a couple of things that have come out of these kind of talking points that I'd love to just layer on there. One of the things that we're three main things that we're focusing over and above the assortment and the B2B platform is, listen, pre-pandemic, guys, 75% of the orders were placed on the iPad. So, one of the things that we've done is we've really made the iPad really robust. Why? You're in the showroom, you're making quick order assortments, you can have that conversation with the brand, and then you can do all of your works post that, right? So that there is the iPad application. And then as a lot of people said, I think Sarah summed it up beautifully, if you put in effort to create the right profile and connect with retailers globally, you have a genuine opportunity to grow your business. So we have a connection-based marketplace actually at Jor, which is really fundamental here. And then to kind of close the loop on that, it's something that we launched in 22, is we actually launched an embedded payment service, multiple ways to take orders, but really that's an end-to-end process in terms of, creating orders, showcasing it, getting orders on board, and then all the way through to invoicing and checkout. So it's a full 360 approach in terms of the way that you're doing business. But yeah, absolutely echo all those conversations and those notes by the panel.
Thank you, Chris. It's been touched on in the audience questions, so a reminder to our audience, do ask questions if you'd like, and I can put anything relevant to the panel. But a lot of your answers have sort of said, the right store, the right partner, and I know this is quite a tricky question, but what makes them the right partner? What do you look for? We have talked about those kind of, those key accounts, those prestige names that obviously size and scale you can't really compete with. But as you said, Thomas, some of those smaller independent retailers, especially when you add them together, can be equally as powerful. So it is quite a tricky one, but we keep using that word, the right person, the right partner. What is it that you guys look for? Does anybody like to take that on? I didn't prepare this question for you. So.
I can go. I think, the right partner, even if we have different brands, I think we are looking for the same thing when we're looking at the right partner. Usually it starts with brands and the brand mix that you're going to see in a partner. Depending on the market that you're targeting, again, the distribution or the positioning might be slightly different from one market to another. in your home market. Sometimes like you have a different position than like in external, like if you go like more internationally. But I think the brand mix is very important. Brand mixes are going to be very different from one brand to another. I think the key to like the right positioning is to make sure you have a good idea of who you want to be as a brand. Again, it goes back to being true to yourself, because we have examples of brands that thought they were like luxury, or that they were actually designer, and it's fine. But like if you're trying to get like to sit next to Dior and Saint Laurent, it's not always like the best place for you to be. So I think it's very much about like knowing who you are, and then making sure that your product is going to sit well with those other brands in the store. Then it's also like I think it comes with experience, or like with networking. You'll know who are the best potential partners based on like those brand mixes, who are the best partners in the towns or cities you're targeting, because obviously, especially now more than ever, you have to be mindful of like the financial health from everyone, making sure you're not going like putting yourself in trouble, like going with the wrong partner. I think this is one of the most important like places to start, because your distribution is going to be your image potentially, and it's also like something that like people are going to look at. It's again, I think Ben said it, like it's very easy to grab everything that comes your way. The growth is going to be phenomenal for the first few seasons, and then you're going to see that the revenue is not going to be there because people are not selling out. You might end up like having issues because people are not going to like pay your invoices. So I think it's really like about like the image, the relationships, but also understanding who you're dealing with. And also like sometimes if you go in some markets with the wrong partner, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually enter the right boutique like down the line if like you have to change your distribution. So I think again it goes back like to making sure you have like you're going like one step at a time. Again, like that might not be like everyone's like will, like if you're talking about like your CEOs or like your investors, but at the same time it's better to take it slow and like maybe like open your scope, like generally like in terms of like which markets and countries you're going to target. But I think I would definitely like talk about like brand adjacencies, brand mixes, and just like the type of customers you're talking to.
Thomas, I can interject really quickly there. Ultimately, does this mean that it's the final consumer that has the ability to go into the right store to be able to buy like-minded product, right? That's key as well. So the retail store ultimately commands the brand mix, the adjacencies, but the consumer going into that store has the ability to buy like-minded brands across the portfolio, right? So there is not a huge disparity in terms of the brand adjacencies and the prices. Would that be a fair statement, would you think, or?
It is, but then it's like, I mean, unfortunately, I don't know, but like it's not like that straightforward. I would say that like at Ganni, for instance, in some markets, we are very like fortunate to have like to be the entry price point to designer and luxury. So the example I gave, for instance, being sitting next to Saint Laurent and Dior, we're lucky enough that that's the case for us sometimes. But because like the aesthetic of the product speaks to these customers. Having said that, you also have to be careful because like you don't want to scare your customer, like your end consumer away. I think it's if you're buying, for instance, like a product that is like, I don't know, 200 to 300 euros, you want to feel comfortable coming into a store and buying that product like without like feeling judged or like feeling like looked at like in a different way. So I think it's also like you have to make sure that these people are able, like these stores are able to actually provide and all of like most of them are actually able to do that, like to have like a unique and beautiful experience for your customer that is coming to buy like a luxury or designer. But at the same time, someone that comes and wants to buy like a Ganni dress is also going to feel very much welcome and in the right place actually.
Clear.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to add on that? Kind of what you define as the right fit or the right partner? No?
I think it should feel genuine, right? Like if it's someone, you know, I was at Christopher Kane in my previous role, and we were working with launching More Joy, and Violet's Cakes was at the end of the road, and someone that, you know, Christopher and Tammy knew well. And so we did a collaboration with them and put like more cake in the thing. And that was a huge success. And I think one of the reasons why is because it was very genuine, that relationship there. So I think the point that I was trying to make before is create those genuine relationships, but they shouldn't feel forced. And to Thomas's point, the brands that have similar adjacencies to yours is where you will feel more at home, right? Like it's the stores that your brand will shine in, and not, you know, next to the super brands if that's not what you're aspiring to. So that's my 2 cents.
And on that note, actually, like if I can just like add, I think it's very important. Like the genuine part is super important, because you might have like sometimes two stores like in the city that are kind of like similar in terms of brand mixes. I would always like 100% of the time go to the store that is actually reaching out to you in that case, unless there are like some things that like some red flags here and there. But I would say that that's the most important part, because it's a journey. Like sometimes like relationships or partnerships between brands and retailers, they last for like decades. And I think you're gonna have some like ups and downs, some collections that are doing better than the others. That's the way fashion works. And I think in order to make sure that that partnership actually like goes on and is getting stronger and stronger, you need to make sure like it's genuine on both sides. And I think it's definitely like about like people being like interested in the brand. I think there were questions about it like in the Q&A as well. I think if you have a store, if you're stocking like brands and you're after like several brands, just continue reaching out. I know like we do receive like these emails, and I think we're not always like we are trying at least to be always like to respond, to explain why. And I think you should continue, because that's the best proof of like your commitment to the partnership, potential partnership. So I would say as a brand, definitely like the best option.
Excellent, thank you. We've touched quite a lot on, we kind of mentioned international expansion quite a lot, but I did want to just kind of come back to that, because with this community of Scandi brands that we've talked about, it's kind of, there has felt this kind of move from, you know, being local and well known in your own country, and then that kind of leap internationally. We have all sort of mentioned it, but if anyone had anything to add in terms of advice for that kind of taking that step and where to start, you know, there's the whole world out there. If anybody would like to pick that one up.
I can pick that one.
Go, Ben.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's like I also saw that in the Q&A there was a few questions related to, should I go with a sales agency? Should I set up my own sales organization? Obviously, it all depends on where your company and brand is in the life circle. But I mean, you know, I've written down some notes, and I was like, you know, saying to myself, like, how did we actually start a Stand Studio? And that was literally as in, it seems like some of in the audience are in that place right now, you know. Okay, I came with experience. However, it was just like founding from zero. So meaning that, okay, let me exhibit, let me try to get into a fair in Copenhagen, for example, or let me try to get to Paris and do a fair, a trade show there. And, you know, in the end, you know, it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time. And I think I was in Paris maybe 3-4 seasons, collections, before I got my first international order kind of feeling. And, you know, it was me standing in a corner with one rack and trying to, you know, wave, please come over here, please come over here. And in the end, you know, it comes down to the product again, and of course the branding, because in the end, you know, if you have a product, you know, these buyers are very, very skilled, regardless whether it's boutique or if it's department store or e-commerces, they know exactly what they're going for. And when they spot you, that is where you all of a sudden become an eyesight for them in their scope. So it takes time to build. And I don't think there is a right or wrong whether you should go with agents or not. I mean, you can always expand. I think in the end, expansion is actually the easy part. But as Thomas said, like being consistent and being profitable on a healthy business, that is super difficult actually. So again, it's really a balance. But I would always recommend, seen from my scope, to have rather few sales agents to maintain and to collaborate with. It gives more attention to them and allows them to have maybe bigger territories, so they can work within and be profitable. And then, as Chris maybe also already mentioned, like don't try to conquer the entire world in one go. You know, that is impossible in the end. So rather focus on key markets that you want to penetrate, and focus and keep focusing on that. As Sarah May said, like, you know, give them a call again next Monday, and one day someone will pick up the phone and say, listen, I don't want you calling me anymore, so I'm going to see you now for an appointment. And then you succeeded. And, you know, 90% of getting an order is just getting the appointment. So, yeah.
Excellent advice. Thank you. Chris, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very much talking about the physical element, right? Whether you go with an agent or a distributor or a trade show, or you set up your own entity, there are financial considerations for all, as Bent mentioned there. I think from Joe's point of view, looking at the digital element, we have you know, over 600,000 buyers on the platform, and we operate in 150 countries or around 15 different languages. So again, part of the strategy is this digital transformation where, yes, you can go with an agent or you can set up your own entity or you're doing it strategically, but we give the opportunity for looking at potential key retailers globally for expansion as well, whether it's Asia Pacific or whether it's within EMEA or actually within North America as well. So it's almost a multifaceted approach in terms of the strategy, right?
Now, thank you all so much. We're running out of time, but we're gonna try and whiz through some audience questions. So if there is anyone in the audience that wants to get some questions in, do feel free, and I'll do my best. And if we can't get to it, we'll try and connect you with the right person afterwards, if you leave your name rather than an anonymous question. Something that I think has come up a lot, we talk about this success and this growth, and that's all well and good, but how do you manage that growth? There's been a few questions there around, you know, that as you you get the stockist, but then you have to make the clothes and you have to deliver the clothes and they have to go on time. Do you have any advice for that kind of handling that part of your expansion?
I mean, I think it's a miracle when you see things on the shop floor that it's even made it there. There's so many aspects that can go wrong in the process, and I think it's really, really important to have the foundations right. If you could sell to 150 stores, but if your supply chain isn't able to support that, then you end up doing more damage than good because you're letting down those clients, and you only really get one chance these days, maybe two if you're nice enough or lucky enough. But I think that would be a great idea, Graham, to have another panel and have all the supply chain people talk, because it's so, I saw some questions on sustainability, and sustainability in the supply chain is so important and so interesting, but I think that would take a whole nother hour to go through. But again, I mean, my advice would just be about creating relationships with the people in your supply chain as well, so that if anything is going wrong, you find out about it with enough time to warn your customers, and then you can make a group decision to either recode something to a new season or repurpose it through other stores or other opportunities.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone got anything to add on that?
I would say, like, I mean, as Chris was also mentioning and Brent before, obviously you cannot, depending on your financial situation, you're gonna have to make decisions based on that. I would just say that you need to scale up and to make sure that you have, just like Sarah was also saying, to make sure you have the right back end to your business, because the main issue is going back also to what she said, is that you have one good first chance to make a good first impression, and once you've if you disappoint these people, it's going to be very difficult to go back and just reaching out again. I mean, you can, but it's just the bridges might be burned. So I think you need to be very careful. Again, it goes back to the pace that you're chasing. Don't go too fast if you're not able to actually fulfill. I would really say try to scale up as as fast as you're growing. Never like easy to actually do, easy to say, but that's like the key, because otherwise like there are a lot of examples of brands that have actually like grown extremely fast, and they actually like exploded because like there's no way they could follow up. So I think it's very important to make sure your organization is actually growing, or at least is able to support this kind of growth.
Thank you. There's been a few questions about the kind of the international points that we touched on, and I thought this is quite an interesting one. They've asked, is there a particular territory that does well for you, and why do you think your brand resonates there? And I'm adding to that, if you were to give advice as, you know, where to start, what might that be, internationally speaking? Sarah May, can I pick on you? Sorry.
Because I never shut up. Well, I think it's really important to start in your home territory. Again, a consistent theme in what I've been saying is to make sure that those relationships are genuine. So, you know, I joked about, you know, stalking someone at the yoga class, but if there is a client that you know that you have a relationship with, then that's always a good place to start. And then when you start to expand globally or internationally, to really focus, you know, not trying to do too many things at once. So, you know, at Holzweiler, we're opening 4 stores in China this year in each of the key cities, and that's really exciting. And you know, we were also thinking about maybe we should go for Korea as well, and the US and the UK, which is our new international hub. But you know, you can't be everywhere and do everything at once. So you know, we've decided to scale back. The US will be our focus for next year. You know, we have some great traction already on some great independent stores and some department stores, but you know, just making sure we're not, as Thomas was saying, setting ourselves up for failure by trying to do too much all at once. So do less better.
Excellent advice. And I quite like this because you know, we have the panel of Scandi style. So someone has asked if you have any advice specifically for breaking into the Scandinavian market, and particularly to Ben's point about picking kind of the best, the vital few. Are there any particular retailers that really stand out to you in your home regions?
Well, I mean, you know, Scandinavian market is not so different from many other markets, except for that it's a very difficult market to penetrate, actually. At least for brands coming outside of Scandinavia, perhaps. Scandinavia is geographically a big market, actually, but there are very, very few clients compared to other markets such as Benelux or the DACH area, or whatever we call them in regions. There are, of course, key clients as everywhere else, or key partners, or like partners that has a higher end approach. I mean, I don't think that maybe here is relevant to specify them, but maybe more in generalize. It's like, you know, we have boutiques, we have department stores, and we have e-commerces, and all three departments or kind of stores are equally important for our distribution. So you know, always go for the major cities. Maybe it's Copenhagen, Stockholm, Oslo, and Helsinki, for example, and maybe start that way. That's easier also to get the branding more coherent from the beginning. But yeah, besides that, I would say it's the same, at least for Stan, it's been the same strategy. We focused obviously also on the Scandinavian market at first, but then in the minute that we started to go international, it was called Europe. And so we focused very much in continents rather than in specific markets, saying that, okay, we really want to gain footprint on the European market. That was our kind of number one. And as Sarah May also mentioned now, like of course the Asian Pacific is super relevant for many reasons, and for many brands. it all really depends on strategies. Like for Stand Studio, we right now we're also focusing on Asian Pacific, but we have already an existing business going on in North America, which is still going on, and we're not finished with that yet. So maybe that is taking more of our focus versus the APAC market, for example.
I think one of the things, again, Ben, just really quickly, if you talk about international expansion as well, there are implications in terms of trade, taxes, importations.
Absolutely.
So again, that also has a bearing in terms of the financial implication to your goods as well, right? So
sure. Yeah, and all these things is obviously something each brand needs to consider, all depending on where's the production taking place of, the country of origin. It really has an impact if you want to penetrate the United States, and if you, for example, are producing in China, mainland China, well, there will be some heavy duties involved because of a trade war. I think that we all three brands here know of that already. So there's a lot of consideration, and maybe that is supporting your decision whether you want to go into United States or not at this very moment, or whether you want to go to mainland China, for example, instead. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Bent. Sadly, that is all we have time for. We're already running a bit late, but I feel like we could have talked all afternoon, but unfortunately, we have to draw it to a close. So thank you to Thomas, to Sarah May, to Bent, and to Chris, and thank you to Jewel, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
thanks, guys. Bye.